What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the A24 Archive. This is the segment on my channel where I go back through A24's entire filmography from the first film that they released all the way until whenever I get caught up. And the movie I'm going to be discussing today, I've seen before. I actually saw this in the theater when it was first released, and I actually really loved it the first time that I watched it. I really connected with it in that moment. I felt like it was really well made. And so I'm always curious. I haven't seen it in a couple years now, and I was really curious to revisit it, see how it was going to sit with me this time around. And the movie I'm going to be discussing with you today is Mid90s. Mid90s is directed by Jonah Hill. In 1990s Los Angeles, a 13-year-old spends his summer navigating between a troubled home life and a crew of new friends he meets at a skate shop. So I was really excited to rewatch this movie because, like I said, the first time I saw it, I really loved it. And I really liked it this time around. I don't necessarily think it hit me as hard as the first time that I watched it. I feel like I noticed some things this time around that kind of irritated me a little bit more about the movie, and that I didn't really appreciate it as much as I did the very first time that I watched it. I still think it's very effective at creating a very specific feeling and invoking a very specific feeling that I think a lot of us have felt before in our lives. And I'm excited to talk to you about the movie today. So at the beginning of the film, we're introduced to Stevie, played by Sunny Suljic, who lives at home with his single mom and his brother Ian, played by Hedges. And the two of them, him and his brother, they're constantly fighting, similar to a lot of brothers just beating each other up. And Ian is significantly older, so he just treats him kind of like he's the dumb little brother. And we see him just going about his day-to-day life, kind of living on his own, but wanting to learn more about his brother. Like, he goes into his room when he's gone, listens to his music. He just wants to be cool. And one day he stumbles across these kids outside of this skate shop, and he starts spending time with them. He starts skating with them. He starts learning a little bit more about skate culture, and he wants to start skateboarding himself. And the entirety of the film is watching this kid join this other group of kids and trying to discover his identity, hanging out with these people who he wants to get to know. So like I said, I really enjoyed this movie, if not as much as I did the first time that I watched it, but I still liked it a lot. For starters, I really like the performances in this movie. I think Sunny Suljic does a really great job, and all of the actors that play the young kids do a really great job, like playing these very natural characters. There's sometimes that the dialogue is a little bit ridiculous. I know there's people that complain about some of the slurs that are said in this movie, but that was the 1990s, unfortunately. I grew up in the 90s and early 2000s, and that is the way kids talked, and that is the way kids acted. So that was really just capturing the time period. But other than that, there's some moments of dialogue that, like, just the cadence of people's voices and the way they talk to one another. There's some moments that feel a little unnatural, but for the most part, I feel like the actors do a really great job with the material that they're given. I love the way this movie is shot. It has a very specific feel to it, and I think capturing the essence of the 1990s, what Jonah Hill was able to do with this movie, is very impressive. I think, there's so much content that exists now that takes place in different time periods, and kind of looking back at a period in time, there's often creators that just don't feel like they're able to capture the essence of those periods in time in a way that is very authentic or real to the period. And Jonah Hill nails it here, not only just through the visual aesthetic, but through the production design and the musical choices and the way that kids talk. It just feels like that time period in a way that I really appreciated. I also really love the musical choices in this movie. I think when you're picking songs from a time period, it's very important for it to kind of just match the scene. And it doesn't just feel like he's throwing in a collection of his favorite 1990s music. It's like there was clearly a lot of time and effort and energy put into when specific songs were going to be queued up throughout the movie. And then also there's original music from Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, who have just become two of the greatest composers in the film world right now. I feel like anytime I see their names on any product, it's just always incredible. And what I really loved about this movie is I feel like there's a lot of people who say, oh, this is a movie where there's not really a big story or there's not really a ton happening. But what this is it's really just a slice of life story about this one kid in particular. And what I really like is just he feels like an authentic teenager, because there's so many moments in life where you feel uncertain about your identity or your sense of belonging in specific groups. And I remember growing up as a kid with a lot of interests, never really feeling like I fit in any specific group because of the wide array of interests that I had. And when like my interests would try to cross over, and people weren't interested in one thing comparatively to another, it's kind of hard to settle in and feel like you found your people. And what I like about this movie is it's someone who has interests, but is also trying to express interest in something, create community. And like, seeing the way he is with his brother. His older brother is a dick who just treats him really poorly solely because he's the younger brother. But you can see that there's this sort of yearning and longing to be close to him until he starts to develop his own identity, and more conflict is created when the brother doesn't like that group of friends. I also really like when we see this friend group and we see all the different backgrounds that they come from and the different communities, and how they sort of use skating as an escape from their day-to-day life and the things that they experience. And I like the way that they are able to capture some of those elements of like what those people were going through in their day-to-day lives, and using this group of friends as a form of escapism, as so many people do when it comes to friendships and connections that we have in our day-to-day life. It's just a way for us to sort of escape a lot of the issues that we have on a regular basis. And that's my favorite part of that. And I also really like the incorporation of the mother's character. We don't necessarily sit with her for long periods of time, but I think when it comes to the single parent trying to watch over two kids, especially teenagers, when it's like, you know, they're in their rebellious stage and their stage of trying to figure out who they are as people, watching her reaction to certain situations, I really like how they approached her character. And I think that there's a lot of really great moments with her, and just like her trying to figure out her own life and the things, like we see a guy coming in and out of the apartment, and like her just trying to establish some semblance of normalcy, and how that impacts the kids' lives as well. And there's so much that's understated about this movie when it comes to the emotional dynamics created without dialogue. And that's something else that I really like, because I've said it before, I love slice of life movies that feel like they just capture the human experience in a very authentic and realistic way. And I think Mid90s does that really well for the most part. Like I said, there's some dialogue moments in this that don't necessarily work the best for me. Some of the pacing isn't the greatest, but I do think as far as like coming of age movies go, this is a really solid addition into A24's catalog. And I think if anything I've said sounds interesting to you, you should 100% check it out. So have you seen Mid90s? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I think this movie's really great. I always very much enjoy it whenever I revisit it, and I always look forward to checking it out again whenever I get the opportunity to. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.